Hello, everybody, and welcome to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. I am your host, Trevor Butz. It's a solo edition of ITWOBL here today as we bring you a President's Cup preview. We get to discuss all things President's Cup, or I should say as it is just me today. It is a pre-recorded edition of ITWOBL, as Greg and I did have some things going on Wednesday, so apologies about not being able to bring this to you live, but I think this is a good alternative as we still get to give all of you fine folks out there a preview of the President's Cup that is looking like it's going to be a very exciting tournament. All the action kicks off in Whitby, Ontario, starting on Sunday, August 24th. That is when the first games occur, and it should be a good one, as it's a bit of a new format this year for the President's Cup, at least new to me, I should say, in my recent years following the Prezi. Teams are separated into two pools this year, two pools of 4 teams apiece, and it looks like the teams will have to play a round-robin round, play each of the teams in their pool once before they move on to the quarterfinal rounds, which they are matched up with the corresponding opponent in the opposite pool. So, like, first place team in Pool A will play the fourth place team in Pool B, as an example. In the quarterfinals, there's the consolation round right after. Then the winners of the quarterfinal rounds move into the semis, which take place on Friday, August 29th, and then the finals on Saturday, August 30th. I know that is going to be a busy but exciting time up in Whitby, Ontario. Bronze medal game on the 30th starts at 3. The gold medal game slated to start at 7 o'clock that day. But before we get anywhere near the gold medal game, we got to get into who is going to be at the President's Cup this year. Well, all of you fine folks that have been tuning in and watching the Can-Am Lacrosse League all season long know one of the 8 teams at the President's Cup this year. That is the Can-Am representative, the Allegheny Arrows. The Arrows making their second consecutive trip to the President's Cup after having never went before in their team's history, now going in back-to-back years. And for Allegheny, I think it's going to be huge for the Arrows coming off their bronze medal last year, having that President's Cup experience to build off of for their team and their run this year. It's going to make a world of difference, in my opinion, for the Arrows, because the President's Cup, it's a marathon, not a sprint, a week-long event. And typically in years past, you'd have 7 teams there and you'd play every day. Sometimes you'd play twice in a day. So you really got to be conditioned, got to have the cardio, and got to have the drive to be able to make it through that week-long tournament. Like I said, a bit of a different format this year, but it is still going to be a grind. And the Arrows do have some experience with that President's Cup grind, as I mentioned. And Allegheny, they are led by one of their superstars in Chris Cloutier. Kluch has been excellent for the Arrows in the postseason, finishes with 18 goals in the championship series. Simply incredible performance from Chris Cloutier, our unofficial Can-Am Finals MVP. I don't know who else it could be given to. He was simply spectacular, and you got to watch out for Cloutier up at the Prezi for the Arrows. Chase Fraser, a great Can-Am Championship Series from him as well. 11 goals, 10 for Lane Smith, and 7 for Christian Watts. 5 for Zach Miller, just to round out the offensive group, the main studs up there. And, of course, Amos Whitcomb, 7 goals for him in the finals. It's a loaded offensive unit for the Allegheny Arrows. And guess what? It just got better, because going into their pickups for the President's Cup, one of the biggest and most marquee names that I saw was they added forward Colton Marquis to the roster, did the Allegheny Arrows. Marquis, in his picture there, is pictured as playing for Peterborough and as his recent team, and Marquis definitely a top young prospect, a guy who goes to UAlbany, has made some noise there. He is somebody that we're all going to have to really keep a close eye on at the President's Cup because I think he can really make things happen for the Arrows. And joining, that already stacked offensive group, with guys that I mentioned like Zach Miller, Chris Cloutier, Chase Fraser, among many, many others as I just went through them all. That is a huge, huge ad, I think, bringing in a guy like Colton Marquis for that Allegheny forward group. And I think it'll really make a big difference for the Arrows in the President's Cup. And looking through some of their other ads, they were able to pick up Jacob Gasparetti, pictured as having last played for Owen Sound. And Gasparetti, a guy who spent some time with Ottawa in the NLL, a good pickup, helped shore up the defense for the Allegheny Arrows, and they also are able to do that with the addition of former Halifax Thunderbird Corey Becker, as Becker faced off against the Arrows in the championship series playing for Tonawanda. Came out on the wrong end of that series, but hey, not a bad result here for Becker all in all. Gets to end up at the President's Cup either way. So Corey Becker going to be picked up by the Arrows, somebody who can, play both ends of the floor. We got to see him with Tonawanda at points this season. Mainly stayed back and played more defense, but he can score as he had his moments with the Braves for sure. A former Tomahawk who did very well in his time with Tuscarora did Corey Becker. I'm sure he's going to be a big pickup for this Arrows team in the President's Cup, as like I mentioned, this is a grind. This tournament is the real deal, and you need all the depth you can get. Adding guys like Gasparetti and Becker, I think, are just huge adds for the defensive depth of Allegheny, and that's to go along with having some other studs in the lineup like Rudy George, Leo Storos. I know one of Greg's favorites, Sherman Williams, somebody who's played some great defense all year long for the Arrows. Jesse Jimerson, amongst others that, round out that defensive transition unit. Xavier Taylor, throw him in there as well. Getting to add a guy like Gasparetti and Becker, two guys like that, into the mix, I think that really can shore up that defense for Allegheny and, just make them better. That is what you're looking to do with these ads, make your team better, and I think the Arrows have done that. Their fourth and final addition that they made, the Allegheny Arrows picked up goaltender Craig Seneca, and I know that is something that Greg and I talked about, the Arrows being able to add a goaltender and whether or not they would, and I think we both came to the agreement that it would be a good idea for the Arrows to go out and pick up a goaltender. They did, brought in Craig Seneca, did so last year as well, and if I remember correctly, in the times when Seneca played, he was very solid at the President's Cup, and this is example of what I was talking about earlier with the depth of the defense. You want to have depth at the goaltending position too, because although Goa Abrams and Chase Martin are two stellar goaltenders, both of them should be NLL goalies in my opinion. To add a guy like Craig Seneca, a former member of the New York Riptide, into the mix as well, it just gives you another good option just in case Goa or Chase is having an off day, or if they get tired or, God forbid, get injured during one of the games. It really helps having that goaltender depth. Got to see it with Tuscarora at the 2023 President's Cup. Dylan Sprentz, their number one netminder all season long, got injured, I believe it was in the first game of the tournament, and was unable to play much of the rest of it. And Tuscarora relied on Chase Martin in that tournament a lot, a guy who they beat in the finals that year to get to the President's Cup, brought him along to the Prezi, and ended up making him the number one goaltender for most of that tournament. Randy Chrysler Jr. did play as well, got them their win in that tournament. Did Randy Chrysler Jr., player of the game, I believe, as well, for the Tomahawks back in that run. But that just goes to show you how important goaltender depth is for these teams, at the President's Cup. And I think it was a very wise decision by Billy D. Smith and his squad to go out and pick up Craig Seneca, along with Corey Becker, and Jacob Gasparetti and then Colton Marquis. I mean, if you got a guy like Colton Marquis that says he wants to come play for you, I think the Arrows would do anything in their power to make that happen, as they did. Colton Marquis will be with the Arrows along with Gasparetti, Becker, and Seneca, as already mentioned. The only tough part is now for Allegheny, who do you let go? Because I have no idea who's getting the axe here for the Arrows. It is such a good team, such a deep team. I believe you can only keep 25 on your roster and for the President's Cup, and Can-Am teams could keep up to 30 during the regular season. So the fact they got to cut that down to 25, even with the 4 pickups, means that there could be a lot of guys not making the trip up to Whitby, Ontario for Allegheny, but that is going to end up being the decision of Billy D. Smith and his coaching staff. They got the final say there, and I'm sure they will make the best decisions for the team as they look to try and bring home a gold medal and be the first Can-Am team to do it since the Onondaga Redhawks did so back in 2014. You know, Allegheny would love to improve on the bronze medal finish, but they're going to have a tough team to go through along the way, as one of the teams back again in the Arrows pool this year, the defending champion Ladner Pioneers. And for Ladner, it's really going to be different for the Pioneers this go around as opposed to years past, as the Pioneers don't have the plethora of NLL talent that we've seen them put out, in years past in this tournament, especially last year. I mean, good gosh, it looked like a NLL team out there wearing Pioneer jerseys. But this year, not the case for Ladner. Alex Bouquet, the starting netminder for Ladner this season, had a very good regular season, 9-0 for Bouquet, a guy who has, spent some time in the league, bounced around quite a bit. Spent time with the Bandits, of course, Colorado, New England, has spent some time across the NLL, hasn't quite found a home, was out of the league last year, but able to play for Ladner this season, looking to lead the Pios to another President's Cup as they try to four-peat and really establish one of the best modern dynasties here in Senior B lacrosse. And one of the forwards looking to help lead them to that dynasty is Cody Adamson. Adamson had a tremendous regular season, 33 goals, 29 assists, 62 points to lead his entire team by a country mile. The next closest man was Spencer Bromley with 39 points on 17 goals. Great season for Bromley, no doubt, but it was the Cody Adamson show for sure, as he has been the main man up top for the Ladner Pioneers this season, and a big reason why they finished first place in the West Coast Senior Lacrosse Association, and why they were able to take down the Victoria Shamrocks in the championship series. Victoria was trying to make another President's Cup. They got in last year with Ladner qualifying as the host, despite them winning another WCSLA title. And this time, not the case for Victoria. They get defeated by the Ladner Pioneers, and Ladner advances on, looking to claim another President's Cup title. This team that I'm about to talk about next, looking for some revenge, and that is the Edmonton Miners. The Miners made the championship game each of the last 2 seasons and were defeated each of the last 2 seasons by the Ladner Pioneers. This is a Miners team that really wants some revenge in the worst way, and I think they could be poised to do that this year. 12-2 did the Miners finish in the regular season. First place in the Rocky Mountain Lacrosse League, took down Mounties Lacrosse Club in the finals. And the thing with Edmonton, that I've noticed just in my, brief time following the Prezi has been not a lot of big names, but they are the true definition of a team. The Miners, I think, can get doubted by a lot of people, because you look at their roster and you don't see the plethora of NLL names like you would see on Ladner's roster last year. But guess what? The Miners got there. The Miners got to the finals the last 2 seasons. They gave the Pios some close games, and they've had some very impressive tournaments. And I think this is a team that, the chemistry is great, and the cohesion is second to none. So I think they can really make some noise in this tournament. And I think that really makes a difference for the Miners, having that chemistry and cohesion on your team, knowing everybody plays together, during the whole regular season. But a lot of these guys, I'd imagine, are playing together during the off season too, in order to keep that chemistry and build upon it. As we look at the Miners roster here, their leading scorer on the regular season was Jake Bowen, finishing with 45 points. And then the leading goal scorer was Ronan Poosh with 17 goals, 35 points for him. Just looking throughout the roster, I mean, some names like Brett Craig I see on the roster, Hunter Agus, Cameron Greniuk. So some bigger names, on this Miners roster this year. Jarrett Toll, John Lintz, just to name a few. Jake Bowen in there as well. So, I mean, if these guys can all get there and all contribute, I think this Miners Lacrosse Club team could be very, very dangerous, especially when they have Cam McLeod in between the pipes as their starting netminder. McLeod, during the regular season, a 7.4 goals against average, 87% save percentage, picked up 7 helpers, during the regular season as well. Somebody who is a great young goalie, has gotten a chance at the NLL level with Calgary. Didn't get to finish the season as a starter after the Nick Rose trade, but I'm sure he is somebody that, teams are going to be looking to build around as a starting netminder in the future here with Edmonton right now, and I think he could be poised to lead the Miners on a deep President's Cup run once again. And staying out west here, another team that qualified out of the Prairie Gold Lacrosse League is the Standing Buffalo Fighting Sioux, another team we will be seeing once again here at the President's Cup. Standing Buffalo, to the best of my knowledge, will be the Prairie Gold League representative. I know on some of the President's Cup graphics I've seen, it's just shown a league logo, not the Standing Buffalo logo, as I believe they do sort of send an all-star team, so to speak. Don't quote me on that, but just looking at the roster that I do have for Standing Buffalo, it looks like a good one just on its own. I mean, led by NLL guys like Jake Boudreau, Austin Shanks, Mike Messenger, and a legend in Jeff Shatler as well. Boudreau finished as the team leader in points with 35 points in 7 regular season games, 19 goals to lead the way as well for Jake Boudreau. Jeff Shatler second in total points, 33 for Shatler. 18 assists as well to help lead the team, as I think that is a very good core group there for Standing Buffalo if it is going to be the Fighting Sioux, as they were the Prairie Gold League champions, did take down the Saskatoon Brewers in the final series, but having guys like Boudreau, somebody like Austin Shanks, if he can pick up right where he left off in the NLL finals, I think Standing Buffalo could really be in business, as Shanks was playing some of the best lacrosse I've ever seen out of him in the NLL finals. As for his Prairie Gold League stats, 18 goals, 29 points for him. Mike Messenger, somebody that is just so solid defensively, but he can get up the floor, and you can see it here in his stats in the PGLL. 6 goals, 16 points for Mike Messenger. But my main question with Standing Buffalo right now, comes in between the pipes, as their 2 listed goaltenders are Teddy Uzakapi and Holden Isnana. And, no disrespect to either of them, but not guys that I am very familiar with. And I think if you want to win the President's Cup, you need a top-notch goaltender, or else it's going to be very difficult for you. That's why a team like Allegheny goes out and gets a guy like Craig Seneca. That is why the Miners have a guy like Cam McLeod. Why Ladner could go out and get a guy like Alex Bouquet, because these teams know that you need a top-level elite goaltender if you want to have any shot of winning the President's Cup. That is my big question right now for the Standing Buffalo Fighting Sioux. If they are able to, make a few pickups and add to their team, I would definitely look towards the net as an area to improve. But overall, I am very excited for what I can see out of this Standing Buffalo team as they make another trip to the President's Cup. It'll be their second straight year. However, they did go last year despite not winning the Prairie Gold League Championship. Did fall in the finals. I want to say to Saskatoon, in the finals as well, if I'm not mistaken. But Standing Buffalo did go as the Prairie Gold League representative last year despite them not winning. This year, they're able to get their first PGLL title. Congrats to Standing Buffalo on winning that and getting to come to the President's Cup as the league champion this year. Moving on, back east here to the Three Nations Lacrosse League, as their representative is a team that I think everybody that is familiar with the President's Cup knows, the Snake Island Muskies. And this is a team that I think might be the favorite to win the President's Cup. The Muskies have so desperately been trying to get to the mountaintop and claim the President's Cup, and I think this could very well be the team to do it for Snake Island. A plethora of talent led by someone that is not even an NLL guy yet, but someone who will be very shortly, Joey Spallina, and he is simply incredible for the Snake Island team. 15 goals, 35 assists, 50 points for Spallina in 12 regular season games. A big reason why Snake Island finished their regular season 10-3, and with a first-place finish in the Three Nations Lacrosse League, able to get through the Capital Region Axemen in the first round of their playoffs, and then took down the Ganawage Mohawks in a 3-2 thriller in what was an epic best-of-5 series up there. Snake Island wins another Three Nations League title. I believe it gives them the most in league history, or ties them for the most in Three Nations League history, so congrats to Snake Island for that. But we all know the Muskies have much bigger goals than just winning a Three Nations League title. They want the Prezi. That is what they are chasing, and I think Spallina could go a long way to helping bring the President's Cup back to Snake Island. Some other big names throughout their roster. I mean, Matt Accioni in transition. Adam Bomberry, the former world champion with the Bandits, back there on defense. Jackson Raposo in the lineup as well. Another former Bandit in Vaughn Harris, somebody who I think has just exudes talent. Vaughn Harris, loved watching him play in Buffalo. 13 goals for him in 8 Three Nations League games this season. Skylar Thomas, another player that is very impressive, somebody that is experienced here at this high level. 12 goals, 24 points for Thomas on the season. Briar Jonathan, an NLL guy coming in, shoring up the defense. Had a brief stint in the league not too long ago. I know he was on the Bandits practice squad or tryout squad at one point a few seasons ago, but Briar Jonathan, back playing D for Snake Island, a big physical presence back there that I am sure is going to let everybody know that he is back there playing D, as you're going to have a tough time scoring on Briar Jonathan. But these guys that I'm about to talk about next don't have much trouble scoring on anybody, and that is Ryan Lanchbury and Stephen Keogh. Lanchbury coming off his best season as a pro with Rochester, one of the top playmakers in the NLL this past season, doing more of that with the Snake Island Muskies. 9 goals, 13 assists for 22 points for Ryan Lanchbury, and then Stephen Keogh, an ultimate goal scorer, kind of the yin to Lanchbury's yang there. Had a bit of a slower regular season by his standards. Only see him listed with 6 points in 8 games, but Kehoe, a big game player. He'll come alive in the President's Cup. Do not fear, Muskies fans, and I am sure that he could help them win that President's Cup, because I really think this Snake Island team is very loaded, and that's without any pickups. These teams can still make additions, like I talked about with Allegheny, and this is a very stacked Snake Island team without any of those additions, so I can only imagine how much better they will get once they make those adds. And then their starting goaltender, returning from last season, Nick Daymood, the Wings netminder, had a tougher season in Philly than I think he would have liked, in his first year, out away from Panther City and getting out of that environment. Had a rougher year with the Wings, but, looking to bounce back here in the summer and help lead Snake Island to the President's Cup. And they're going to be riding Daymood, the whole tournament long, as many of these teams do. Had a very good regular season in the Three Nations League, only giving up about 8 goals per game. If you can keep teams right around that number, I think they will take it all day, will the Muskies. Moving on to our host at the President's Cup this season. They are the hosts, but they enter as the defending Ontario Series Lacrosse champions, and that is the Brooklyn Merchants, one of the few new teams here at the President's Cup. And when I say new, I mean new from last year, as many of these teams, were represented at the President's Cup last season and are represented here once again. The Merchants are the hosts coming out of the OSL, but also the champs, as I mentioned. 14-2 regular season for the Brooklyn Merchants. Took down the Six Nations Rivermen, a team we'll be talking about shortly, in the finals, 2-0. And there's a lot to like about this Brooklyn Merchants team. Lots of great young players, guys that I think are going to go very high in this year's draft and in drafts in years to come, because they are loaded with just great young talent, and it all starts with their leading goal scorer, Will McLeod. McLeod picked up 38 goals during the regular season through 13 games, finished with 63 points, second on his team to Parker Piper, finished with 67 points, 50 assists to lead his entire team. Devin Piper in there as well, another great playmaker. 42 assists for Devin, 59 points to his credit, as those are the main men, at the forward position for the Brooklyn Merchants. But they got some other talented players throughout the lineup as well. Just looking at the roster, I mean, Nicholas Volkov was a highly drafted player by Albany. Seeing some other interesting names like Alex Marinier in there as well. Kellen Pulera, Braden Saris throughout the lineup as well. And I think that's going to make for a very interesting Merchants team this year. They're trying to win the Prezi as the host, not the most common thing. Ladner did it last year, but they were the host and the champs. Brooklyn, the host and the champs this year. Maybe that could be the case for the Merchants, the champs of the OSL. Now here at the President's Cup, led by Deacon Knott as their starting netminder. Knott, a great regular season. 631 goals against average, 721 save percentage for Deacon Knott, as he looks to try and propel the Merchants to the President's Cup. I believe they're looking for their first, if I'm not mistaken, and that would just be huge for the Brooklyn Merchants and everything that, Gavin Prout and everybody up there is trying to build, get to host the Prezi, and then get to lift the trophy at the end. Come on, I don't think it can get much better for Brooklyn if that would be the case, but still a long way to go, and they're going to have to get through their Ontario Series lacrosse rivals in the Six Nations Rivermen, who I know are going to be very upset at not winning the championship. Finished at 12-4 with a second-place regular season finish in the OSL, and then were defeated by the Brooklyn Merchants 2-0 in the best-of-3 championship series. And this is a Rivermen team that's been to the Prezi before. It seems like they're here every year. Very experienced. They've won the Prezi in years past, and you know they want to do it again. And how much would the Rivermen enjoy going up to Brooklyn, an OSL rival, and winning the Prezi on their home floor? I think that alone is motivation enough for the Six Nations Rivermen as they head into the President's Cup, led by one of their young superstars in Thunder Hill. Got a chance to, get to know some members of the Hill family. Owen Hill plays down in Tonawanda. Roger Hill, the father of Thunder, very involved with the Tonawanda Braves here in the Can-Am Lacrosse League. Would have presented an interesting conundrum there for Roger. If Tonawanda would have won and they play against the Rivermen with Thunder on the other side, would have made for something interesting, but not the case. Unfortunately, Tonawanda doesn't make it. However, Jay Smith in an interesting position there as well, with Mr. Smith being heavily involved here with the Six Nations Rivermen, and of course his son Lane Smith, one of the top goal scorers on the Allegheny Arrows, as that should be an interesting game if we get to see it. Those teams are in opposite pools, so it all, depends, but, Thunder Hill, I mean, what else is there to say about Thunder Hill, though? 41 goals in the regular season, 75 points, simply remarkable coming from Thunder Hill, somebody that if he's not on NLL radars for whatever reason, he is now with that kind of season. What a year from Thunder Hill. If he can parlay that into an excellent President's Cup, I'm, sure he will get the NLL looks in years to come. Zach Harrowires, another former NLL guy, former Bandit on this Rivermen team, had 10 regular season goals, 25 points. Kevin Owen Hill, another former NLL guy on this Rivermen's roster. Ty Logan in there as well. Brooker Muir for the Transition D group. Greg Elijah Brown, another good young player on this Rivermen team. 19 goals, 29 points for Greg Elijah Brown during the regular season. Austin Bloomberg's played in a few games for the Rivermen as well on the roster, but one of their big goal scorers and somebody they're going to be looking to a lot during the President's Cup, I think, is got to be Wake Riot Bow Hunter, or Bo Hunter as he is often known. And Mr. Bow Hunter, a very good OSL season in limited action, only 6 games, but 6 goals, 17 points in those 6 games. I think for Bow Hunter, he's a good player, was drafted very high, first-round pick, has spent some time with Halifax, but we're still waiting to see that jump out of Bow Hunter, and this could be the opportunity that he has been waiting for. Golden opportunity at the Prezi. Everybody's always watching, the President's Cup, along with all of these big summer tournaments. The scouts will be watching Wake Riot Bow Hunter, or Bow Hunter, and I know he's got the long-term contract in Halifax, but if he doesn't feel that he's going to get the opportunity there, and he performs well at this President's Cup, I am sure there will be another NLL team that'll give him a shot, especially with his pedigree. And then the starting netminder for the Rivermen looks like it would be Ty Belanger, either him or Elan Henhawk, the 2 listed goaltenders. Belanger, it looks like, played in 6 games for the Rivermen during the season, Henhawk in 9, so a varying amount between the goaltenders, but that could also be to the advantage of the Rivermen if teams don't really know who to expect as the number one goalie, kind of like we've seen with Allegheny. Is it Goa? Is it Martin for the Rivermen? They could go, is it Belanger or is it Henhawk? Is it somebody else? Who knows? Right now, my best guess would be, the NLL veteran Ty Belanger, but we will see as that rounds out the two Ontario teams. Our lone team left to talk about, the Winnipeg Blizzard, the Manitoba representative here in the President's Cup. A newer thing here for the Prezi, bringing in the team from Manitoba. At least I don't recall that happening in the last few seasons, as this is my first experience with the Winnipeg Blizzard, and they're a team that I'd say they're probably the team I'm the most excited to watch, given that they're probably the team I know the least about. I took a look at the roster last night. Didn't really recognize a whole lot of names, and I'm not trying to take a shot at Winnipeg or anything. It's just, it's just a little different, that's for sure, and it just makes it all that more exciting, doesn't it? Getting to see all these guys for the first time and see who's going to break out and, who's going to really catch fire and catch the eyes of these scouts. And this is a great opportunity for everybody on the Winnipeg Blizzard team. Some last names there similar to some NLL names. Don't know if there's any family connections. I see a Colin Poitras on the roster as well. Don't know if there's any relation there, but if there is, that could mean there's a lot of pedigree on this Winnipeg team. I'm not so sure, so I don't want to say too much about them, but if anybody does know more about the Winnipeg Blizzard, be sure to put it in the comments. Send us any sort of links or information. If you know anything about Winnipeg, or if you know somebody that is involved with the Blizzard, please let us know, because I'd love to learn more about them and about Manitoba lacrosse, as that is all the teams here that I have went over now for the President's Cup. I've been going for a while here, but how about a few more minutes as we will just wrap things up on this President's Cup preview edition of Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. And I think this is going to be a very exciting tournament. Ladner won the gold last year, Edmonton the silver, Allegheny the bronze. Do I think that is going to be the case again this year? I'm not so sure, as I'd say right now, just based on everything I looked at and researched, if I had to give my three medaling favorites, let's start with that. I'll give my three favorites here to take home a medal. I think Allegheny's got just as good a shot as anybody, and I'm not just saying that because I've seen them all here and I'm very familiar with the Can-Am. That team is loaded, and with how well they have been playing, I think they might be one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to win a gold medal. I think they are very, very close with the Snake Island Muskies. I think that could be a finals matchup, Allegheny and Snake Island. They could, I think, very well could be the two best teams in this tournament. Both of them very solid. Then I think the third team favored to medal, I'd say the Edmonton Miners. Everybody loves to doubt the Miners, at least in the last few years, just based off of, the lack of superstars on their roster, but doubt them no more. I think the Miners are going to take home a medal this year. Which one remains to be seen, but I think the Miners have a great shot, so I'll go with that. My three favorites to medal, Allegheny, Snake Island, and Edmonton. I think Brooklyn, Six Nations have some very good teams as well. Ladner, I'm not sure it's the Pioneers' year. We'll see. Maybe with some new additions, that'll change things, but just based off what I've seen right now, I think the Pioneers' reign of dominance does come to an end this year, but we'll see. They could prove me wrong. So excited to see Winnipeg for the first time and everything that they bring. And, of course, Standing Buffalo, I think the last team here, they could surprise a lot of folks. They have some very good players, like I mentioned, Jake Boudreau, Austin Shanks, Mike Messenger, etc. They could be one of those teams. I'd say Standing Buffalo is probably my most under-the-radar team that I think could go in and get a medal at the President's Cup. Not many teams will maybe expect the Fighting Sioux or the Prairie Gold representative to perform as they could, but I think this Standing Buffalo team is solid, and they could be that under the radar team for a potential bronze medal, we'll say, here as the tournament goes on. I think that will just about do it. The opening day of action here, we'll go over that here too. The Winnipeg Blizzard kick things off against the defending champion Ladner Pioneers in a 10 a.m. game. The Edmonton Miners take on Standing Buffalo in a 1 o'clock game following that. Then the Snake Island Muskies will do battle with the Six Nations Rivermen in a 4 p.m. contest. Opening ceremonies will start at 6:30, and then the final game of the opening night, the Brooklyn Merchants taking on the Allegheny Arrows in what should be a thriller. If you can't make it to the games in Whitby, be sure to check out JVI Sports Network for all of the live streams for these games. They do some great work, and I know they'll be providing some excellent coverage of the Prezi. Be sure to check them out, and if you are up at the games in Whitby, I'm hoping to be there, so if you do see me or Greg or any of the Blue Squatch crew, don't be afraid to stop by and say hello. We always love getting to talk with all of you fine folks that help to make all of these streams possible. Without your support, it wouldn't be, so we thank you so very much as we wrap things up here for Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. I have been Trevor Butz saying so long, and thank you so very much for watching.